Respected friends, I want to remind you today, what you're going through right now is not the end of your story. You may feel stuck. You may feel like the struggle is too heavy, the mountain too high, the night too long. But let me encourage you, God is still at work behind the scenes. He hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't overlooked your prayers. He is using what looks like a setback to set you up for something greater. Think about this. Sometimes before a miracle appears, there's a season of darkness. The seed doesn't start growing until it's buried in the soil. You don't see anything happening on the surface, but underground, something powerful is taking place. In the same way, God is using your struggle to bring out something in you that couldn't come out any other way: strength, faith, compassion, resilience. Maybe you've been praying for a breakthrough in your health, your family, your finances, or your future. And you're tempted to ask, why is it taking so long? But here's the truth: delay is not denial. What looks like a dead end to you is just a bend in the road for God. He can still open doors that you could never open. He can bring the right people across your path. He can heal what medical reports say is impossible. And he can turn what the enemy meant for harm into something that will bless you and others. I remember hearing about a man who lost his job unexpectedly. He was devastated, thinking his best days were behind him, but instead of giving up, he chose to trust God. Weeks later, he was offered a new position, one that paid more and allowed him to do work he truly loved. What seemed like a setback was actually a setup for promotion. Your struggle might feel heavy today, but it is not wasted. God is using it to shift things in your favor. Maybe you can't see the way out right now, but he sees what you can't see. He's already working out the details. He's already lining up the resources. He's already preparing the right opportunities. I encourage you, instead of focusing on what you've lost, focus on what God can do. Instead of living discouraged, keep your faith alive. Thank him in advance for the miracle he's bringing. Your words have power. Speak victory, speak healing, speak hope. Say, God, I may not understand it, but I trust you. I believe you're turning this struggle into a testimony. And remember, sometimes the miracle isn't just about changing your circumstances, it's about changing you, making you stronger, deepening your faith, preparing you to help someone else who will go through something similar. One God is working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it, just like a seed grows underground before breaking through the soil. God often prepares miracles out of sight, using our struggles to build strength, faith, and resilience. It's so easy to get discouraged when nothing seems to change. You pray, you believe, you do your best to stay positive, but day after day the situation looks the same. Maybe you've asked God for healing, but the symptoms remain. Maybe you're trusting him to bring the right people into your life, but you feel lonelier than ever. Or perhaps you're waiting for a breakthrough in your career or finances, but the doors stay shut. In those moments, it's tempting to think God has forgotten you or that he isn't listening. But the truth is, just because you can't see anything happening doesn't mean God isn't working. Behind the scenes, in ways you may never fully understand, he is putting things in place, moving people, opening and closing doors, arranging circumstances, and shaping your heart, all so that what he promised can come to pass at just the right time. Think about how a seed works. When you plant a seed in the soil, it disappears from view. Days pass, maybe even weeks, and you see absolutely nothing. If you judge the process by what you could see, you'd think the seed was dead and nothing was happening. But underground, the seed is germinating, breaking open, putting down roots, preparing to burst through the surface. The miracle starts in the unseen place. The same is true in your life. Just because you can't see your healing doesn't mean it's not on the way. Just because you don't see the right relationship or opportunity doesn't mean it isn't coming. God does his greatest work out of sight. He develops what we need in hidden places before it becomes visible. There's a story I heard about a young woman who dreamed of starting her own business. She prayed, planned, and even saved money, but every time she tried to get it off the ground, something would fall through. She felt defeated and wondered why God wasn't answering her prayers. What she didn't know was that behind the scenes, God was orchestrating something better. Months later, through an unexpected connection, she met someone looking to partner with exactly her skill set and passion. Together, they launched a business that grew faster than she ever imagined. What seemed like wasted time was really God's preparation time. He wasn't saying no, he was saying, "Hold on, I've got something better." Often, God protects us by keeping certain doors closed, even if we don't realize it at the time. You may be disappointed about the relationship that didn't work out, the job you didn't get, or the plans that fell apart. But maybe that door was closed so God could lead you to something healthier, safer, or more fulfilling. When you trust that He's working in places you can't see, you can let go of frustration and live in peace, knowing He sees the full picture while you only see a piece of it. And it's not just about what He's doing outside of you, it's also what He's doing inside you. In seasons when nothing seems to change on the surface, God is often growing your faith, teaching you to depend on Him, refining your character, and preparing your heart to handle the blessing when it arrives. The very struggle you're in may be shaping you into the person who can carry the miracle without losing yourself in the process. It takes faith to keep believing when nothing looks different. It takes trust to say, "God, I don't see it yet, but I believe you're working. I know you love me, and I know you're faithful." That trust keeps your heart soft instead of bitter, hopeful instead of hopeless. And that attitude draws you closer to the God who's already at work on your behalf. When the breakthrough finally shows up, it's rarely random. It's often the result of countless invisible moments when God moved, protected, and guided you without you even knowing. You look back and see how everything fit together in a way you could never have planned. That's why it's so important to keep your faith alive during the quiet seasons. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. God is still on the throne. He's still in control. And even now, in ways you can't yet see, He's working behind the scenes to bring your miracle to life. To delay is not denial. The fact that your prayer hasn't been answered yet doesn't mean it won't be. What looks like a dead end to you may simply be part of God's greater plan and timing. One of the hardest things in life is waiting for the medical report to turn around, waiting for the right person to come into your life. Waiting for a prayer to be answered that feels like it's taking forever, and in that waiting season, it's so easy to start thinking maybe it will never happen, maybe God changed His mind, maybe what you hoped for just isn't meant for you. But here's the truth that can set your heart at peace. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. Delay is not denial. Sometimes God's "not now" feels like a no, but it's really His loving way of saying, "I have something better. Trust my timing." Think about how often in life the most meaningful things take time to build. A strong tree doesn't spring up overnight. A skilled musician spends years practicing before they play beautifully. A diamond starts out as ordinary carbon that must go through pressure and time before it shines. In the same way, what you're waiting for often needs time to become what God really wants for you, something complete, healthy, and lasting. If He gave it to you too soon, it might fall apart, or you might not be ready to handle it the way you could later. Many times, God uses delay to grow your faith. When you don't see results right away, you learn to trust Him more deeply, beyond what your eyes can see. You move from "God, do it now," to "God, I trust you, even if it takes time." That shift is powerful. It turns your relationship with God from something based on outcomes to something built on love and trust. And often, the faith you build in the waiting becomes an even greater treasure than the answer itself. There's a story about a man who prayed for years to get promoted at work. Every time he thought it was his moment, someone else got the position. It would have been easy to give up, to think God didn't care about his career. But he kept showing up, kept doing his best, and kept believing that God was in control. Years later, a higher position opened up, one he never imagined he could have. Because of all the extra years of experience, he was perfectly prepared to step into that role, and it changed his family's life. What looked like repeated disappointment was really God's protection and preparation. If he had gotten promoted earlier, he wouldn't have been ready for the greater opportunity God had planned. You might feel like you've missed your chance because of your age, your past mistakes, or simply because it's been so long. But God doesn't operate on human schedules. His timing is perfect, and he is never late. He knows what doors need to open, who needs to come into your life, and what has to be worked out before your answer can arrive. The years you feel have been wasted are often the very years he's using to set things in place. It helps to remember that God sees the whole picture, while you and I only see a tiny part. Imagine standing in front of a giant tapestry, but all you can see is the back-tangled threads and knots that seem random and messy. But if you could step around to see the front, you'd see a beautiful design. Delay can feel like looking at the back of that tapestry. It makes no sense at the moment, but later, often when you look back, you realize why things had to unfold the way they did. While you wait, keep your faith alive. Don't let bitterness take root. Every day, choose to believe that God is faithful. Speak life over your situation. Instead of saying, "It's never going to happen," say, "God's timing is perfect. I trust him. My answer is on the way." Your words matter more than you know. They can keep your spirit strong, even when your eyes see nothing changing. And remember, the waiting season isn't empty. God often does his deepest work in you during these times. You might discover strength, patience, and faith you never knew you had. You might develop compassion for others going through similar struggles. These gifts often stay with you long after the answer finally comes. So if it feels like your miracle is taking too long, don't lose hope. Delay doesn't mean God has forgotten you. It doesn't mean he changed his mind. It means he loves you enough to give you what's best, not just what's quick. Keep trusting, keep hoping, keep believing, because delay is not denial. Your story isn't over, and the best chapters are still ahead. 3 setbacks can be setups for something greater. What feels like loss, disappointment, or rejection can actually lead to better opportunities, unexpected blessings, or personal growth beyond what you imagine. Life has a way of surprising us with unexpected turns. Sometimes those turns feel like painful setbacks, losing a job you thought was secure, seeing a relationship fall apart after you invested your heart, watching a business dream collapse just when you thought it would take off. It's human to feel disappointment, to ask why, and to wonder if God has forgotten you. But what if the very thing you see as a setback is actually setting you up for something far greater than you could have imagined? What if the disappointment you feel now is part of a divine plan to open a better door, to prepare you for something that would have never happened otherwise? Think about this. When one door closes, it doesn't mean your journey ends. It might just mean that door wasn't the right one for your destiny. Sometimes God uses what looks like failure to push us in a direction we would have never chosen on our own. We naturally cling to comfort and familiarity, but growth often happens in discomfort. When we can no longer stay where we were, we are forced to stretch, to learn, and to step into places we never imagined. There's a story of a man who dreamed of becoming an actor. He moved to a big city, went to dozens of auditions, and faced rejection after rejection. At first, each no felt like a door slamming in his face, but those very setbacks drove him to develop his own small comedy show online just to keep creating. Over time, that show attracted thousands of viewers, then millions, and eventually opened doors to television opportunities bigger than the roles he had originally auditioned for. What felt like a series of painful failures was actually the path that led him to build something uniquely his own. His setback became the exact setup he needed to step into his true calling. In your own life, there may be moments you look back on, moments that hurt, that confused you, that seemed unfair, and you might realize they shaped you into who you are today. They made you stronger, taught you resilience, or opened a new door you hadn't even seen. Maybe losing that job taught you skills you later used to start your own business. Maybe that broken relationship saved you from years of pain and created space for someone who truly values you. What looks like an end can actually be a beginning. It's important to remember that setbacks don't surprise God. He isn't up in heaven scrambling to fix what happened to you. He saw it coming long before you did and has already woven it into his plan. The scripture says that he works all things together for the good of those who love him, not just the victories, but the losses too, not just the joy, but also the heartbreak. Even what the enemy meant to harm you, God can transform and use as part of your testimony. Sometimes the setup isn't about changing your situation, but about changing you. You might discover new strength, creativity, and faith that you wouldn't have developed if everything had gone smoothly. You learn to lean less on your own understanding and more on God's wisdom. You learn compassion for others going through similar struggles. These changes prepare you to step into opportunities you couldn't have handled before. The next time you face disappointment, instead of thinking, "This is the end," try saying, "Maybe this is a setup for something better." Choose to see your struggle as temporary, not final. Speak hope over your situation. Tell yourself, "This is going to turn in my favor." Even if you don't feel it yet, those words keep your faith alive, and faith keeps you moving forward. And while you wait to see what the setup is, keep doing your part. Stay excellent in what you can control. Keep learning, keep praying, keep growing. Your effort is never wasted. When the right door opens, you'll be ready to step through it fully prepared. So don't let your heart settle in disappointment. The story isn't over just because a chapter feels painful. Often, the most beautiful parts of your story are still being written in places you can't yet see. What feels like a setback now might be the very thing that leads you to something greater than you dared to dream. And when that happens, you'll look back and realize that God used it all to set you up for his perfect plan. 4. Choose faith over discouragement instead of focusing on what's missing or what seems impossible. Keep speaking hope and victory. Trust that God can still do what looks impossible from a human perspective. Life will always give us reasons to be discouraged. It could be the news from the doctor that wasn't what you hoped for, the job that fell through after months of interviews, the relationship that didn't last despite all your prayers and effort. It could be something smaller that still weighs on your heart, a harsh word someone said, the constant pressure of financial worries, or simply feeling unseen and unappreciated. Discouragement doesn't knock politely. It pushes its way in, and if we're not careful, it can take root, coloring the way we see everything else. But the truth is, you and I have a choice. Even when we don't have the power to change what happened, we always have the power to choose our response. And choosing faith over discouragement isn't pretending nothing is wrong. It's deciding to keep believing that God is greater than what's wrong. Faith doesn't remove the challenge, but it changes how you walk through it. Faith says, "I don't see the answer yet, but I know God is working." Faith says, "I'm not alone in this. My Creator goes before me and stands beside me." Faith doesn't deny reality, but it refuses to let reality steal hope. And hope is powerful because it keeps your spirit alive, even when the facts say there's no reason to hope. Sometimes it's not even the big moments that test your faith the most. It's the slow drip of disappointment. Day after day, seeing no change, praying, but feeling like your words don't go past the ceiling. In those moments, discouragement whispers, why keep trying? Nothing's going to change. But faith answers, I will keep believing. My breakthrough could come tomorrow. Choosing faith over discouragement doesn't always feel natural. It often feels like swimming upstream, but every time you do it, you strengthen your spiritual muscles. You prove to yourself and the enemy that your hope isn't rooted in what you see, but in who you know. Words have power, and what you speak over your situation matters more than you realize. You may not be able to control the storm, but you can control what you say in the middle of it. Instead of saying, it will never get better, say, God is still able. Instead of I'm so unlucky, say, I'm blessed and favor surrounds me. Instead of nothing changes, say, this might be the day everything turns around. It may sound simple, but your words shape your perspective, and your perspective shapes your endurance. And remember, faith isn't about feeling strong all the time. You can choose faith even when you feel afraid or tired. You can whisper a prayer of trust through tears. Choosing faith is less about never having doubt and more about refusing to let doubt have the final word. It's choosing to get up each day, even when your heart feels heavy, and saying, God, I still trust you. You might be thinking, but you don't know how long I've been waiting, or you don't know how hard it's been. And that's true, but God does. And He sees every unseen tear, every silent prayer, every quiet act of faith. None of it is wasted. Faith often grows strongest in the waiting, because it's there you learn to walk by faith, not by sight. And often, it's in the waiting that God shapes you into the person who can carry the blessing you're asking for. There's a peace that comes when you choose faith. It doesn't mean your situation suddenly changes, but it lifts the weight from your shoulders because you remember you don't have to figure everything out. You remember that God is still on the throne, still working behind the scenes, still able to do immeasurably more than you can imagine. And sometimes what faith really does is open your eyes to see blessings that discouragement kept hidden. You start to notice the small signs of hope, the unexpected kindness, the strength you didn't know you had. You begin to see that even in the struggle there's grace. So when discouragement comes knocking, and it always will answer with faith, not a loud, fearless shout if that's not where you are, but even a quiet, stubborn whisper that says, I still believe. Because faith doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet choice to keep walking, to keep hoping, to keep trusting when everything in you wants to give up. And that choice can change everything, because it keeps your heart open to the miracle God is preparing, even if you can't see it yet. 5 miracles aren't just about changing circumstances. They often change us through our struggles. God shapes us to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, equipping us to help others and fulfill a greater purpose. So often when we pray for a miracle, what we really want is for God to change something around us. We want the sickness to leave, the debt to be paid off, the relationship to be restored, or the door to finally open. And there's nothing wrong with wanting those things. God cares about what concerns us, and He delights in blessing His children. But sometimes in His wisdom, God allows the process of waiting for a miracle to become something even greater than the miracle itself. Because often the most powerful miracles are not what happen to us, but what happen in us. It can feel frustrating when you don't see the answer right away. You may look around and see nothing but the same problems, the same struggle, the same delay. But in that waiting season, God is at work in ways you can't always measure. While you're asking Him to change your situation, He may be gently changing you, shaping your character, deepening your faith, making your spirit stronger and more compassionate than it was before. Think about how gold is refined. It starts as a rough, dull piece of ore. Only through fire does it become something pure and precious. In the same way, the challenges you face can refine your heart. They burn away fear, pride, impatience, and replace them with trust, humility, and endurance. The pressure you feel isn't pointless, it's doing something sacred within you. Maybe the miracle you truly need isn't a new job or a sudden breakthrough. Maybe it's peace that stays even when circumstances are messy. Maybe it's a deeper confidence that God loves you no matter what happens. Maybe it's learning to be content and grateful right where you are, instead of waiting until everything looks perfect. And often, when the external breakthrough finally comes, it's simply confirming what God has already been building inside you all along. I once heard someone say, sometimes the miracle isn't that the storm stops, but that you discover you can walk on the water. In other words, God can give you strength and courage that surprise even you. You thought you'd never make it through the heartbreak, but look at you now, wiser, gentler, and more resilient. You thought the disappointment would destroy your hope, but somehow you found a hope that's deeper than before. That transformation is a miracle too, even if it doesn't come packaged the way you imagine. And here's something beautiful. When God changes you, you often become the answer to someone else's prayer. Maybe you discover compassion you never had before, and now you're able to comfort someone walking through a similar valley. Maybe your testimony becomes the spark of faith someone else needs. Your pain doesn't become meaningless, it becomes a platform for purpose. That doesn't erase what you went through, but it can turn your story into a source of strength for others. While you're waiting for the external miracle, don't miss the internal miracle that may be unfolding right now. Instead of only asking, God, when will you change this? Ask, God, what are you trying to change in me through this? That question can shift your whole perspective. It can turn discouragement into expectation, not just for what God might do outside, but for what He's already doing inside your heart. Sometimes, the most unexpected gift is realizing that what looked like a delay in your life was actually God's grace giving you time to grow into the person who could handle what was coming. If the miracle had arrived too soon, you might not have been ready. But now, because of the struggle, your faith is rooted deeper, your heart is softer, and your spirit is steadier. When the outward answer finally appears, and it often does, it becomes so much sweeter because you see the journey it took to get there. You recognize God's fingerprints, not just in the result, but in every lesson, every prayer, every quiet moment where you chose to trust instead of give up. So yes, pray for miracles. Believe that God can open doors, heal bodies, restore relationships, and make a way where there seems to be none. But also remember, the greatest miracle might just be who you become along the way, stronger, braver, kinder, and more anchored in faith, and that miracle, the one that happens inside your heart, can never be taken away, no matter what happens around you.